Hello and welcome. We're going to be going through the production pipeline I typically follow when working with 360 footage. So we've already captured our 360 footage using our 360 camera of choice or array of cameras in a rig, and I'm going to assume that our footage is already stitched at this point. So I'm going to be starting off using Premiere Pro as the editing tool. So this is how I'll be creating my kind of first cut, which then if I want to later on I could take into After Effects to start adding in effects or composition overlays, etc. So all I've done is I've just opened up Premiere Pro and I've just opened up a new project. I'm going to keep everything as is, so HDV, capture format, 100%, etc, etc. And I'm just going to give this project a suitable name. So I'm going to call this 360 pipeline example. There we go. Let's go press OK. And what we're going to need to do is go to where our 360 footage is housed. Now, we've already provided you by our website a repository of 360 footage that you can use if you haven't got access to a 360 camera of your own. So I've got some footage here. This is some footage I captured kind of early in the year. So I've got these 6 clips here. I'm just going to select them all and drag them into my project window. Sometimes it'll take a while depending on the file sizes that you're working with. You always want to make sure that you're working off the main hard drive. You don't want to be working off a USB stick, for example. If you're working off a USB stick or external hard drive, you'll find that the speed will be a bit more unreliable. So here's my 6 clips. I think the first thing I always do when I'm working with 360 footage is I always right click on them and I always check the properties. So I'm going to right click on one of my clips and I'm going to go to properties. I'm just going to check that these settings here are present. Now, because I captured these on a 360 camera already and I've already made sure that the metadata is in, the footage should already be equiangular, monoscopic, 360 by 180. So these 3 settings are there. If they're not there, for whatever reason, you can simply right click on the footage, go to modify, interpret, and down here under VR properties, select conform, select to equiangular, monoscopic, 360 by 180, and then just hit OK. And I want to make sure I do that with all my clips. So I'm just going to assume that they're all okay because I've already kind of gone through these already. And all I'm going to start doing now is just building up a very quick sequence. So you notice I've checked on my footage and made sure they're all 360 before even creating a sequence. So do not drag your footage into here first, otherwise you have to delete the sequence and then create a new sequence with the interpret footage modify properties done. So that's why I always check first. I'm just going to drag one of my clips into my timeline, like so, and we should have this view here. So this is my 360 footage flattened out. There's me looking quite confused at the camera. Actually, what I'm doing is you'll find that in quite a lot of the clips that I've captured, is I'm keeping an eye on the camera because quite often you can't see it, but it's actually quite windy on a lot of these days, and I didn't want the camera to fall over because I'm using a very low profile tripod. And also, because there's people walking around, I also didn't want my camera just to get stolen. So that's another thing I had to bear in mind. I've already cut this clip earlier, but I'm just going to scroll along and just make sure that it's all there, which it is. There's me just walking around like an idiot. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to start editing my footage like I would any other piece of 360 film. I'm not going to really worry about what my footage actually looks like or kind of do a huge amount of work to it. Again, this would be part of the kind of task or challenge would be to kind of edit your film to sort of build a narrative that you want. I'm literally just doing this for speed reasons, just to kind of go through the basic steps. So here I have 2 clips, both 360. So one outside the castle, one outside the Usher gallery. I've also removed all the audio from these clips, so I would have to make my own audio track. So I could either record my own audio using a microphone, or I could source some online music tracks or audio tracks and start to clip it in. What I quite like to do often with my clips is I actually quite like to have a kind of transition between them. So if I was doing this in a VR headset, having a sort of sudden jump, it's not a big problem, but it'd be quite nice to kind of blend these pieces of footage together. It'd be quite nice actually for me here walking to walk from here and transition into me riding over here. To kind of rule of thumb with 360 footage in Premiere is whatever is in the exact middle of our scene is typically the starting view that the person would have in a 360 or VR headset. If at any point we want to view our content in 360 within Premiere, we need to just enable a few settings. So within our preview window here, you'll notice we have this little plus button. This is our button editor. I'm going to just hit that. And within our button editor window, you should see this little icon here called Toggle VR Video Display. I'm going to drag that onto my button panel down here and then hit OK. And what this video display basically does is allow us to toggle to see what it would look like or emulate what it would look like on a VR headset. So because I've already got these footage and it is already interpreted as a 360 piece of footage within Monoscopic, I should be able to just click on this button and this will create us this sort of one by one little grid or little window that I can now pan around, left, right, up and down, etc, etc. I'm going to make sure that I just reset these to 0, 0 because that would be our starting point. If I didn't want my starting point to be, for example, looking at the castle, what I could do is I could go to my effect window over here or window effects and I could add a offset. So under video effects distort there's a thing called offset. If I drag that onto my video clip here, this will open up our effect panel window for that clip, or I could go to window effect controls, and where we can see our offset value here, we've got this thing here called shift center 2. Now if I was to adjust these values, this will now start to shift up and down, which I kind of really don't want to do, so I'm just going to reset that. I'm just going to come out of VR display so you can see what's happening. So if I didn't want my starting point to actually be looking at the castle gates and wanted to, for example, it to be staring over at the cathedral, I could shift my center on the x-axis until the cathedral is in the middle of my clip. I could use the toggle to VR display to actually make that a bit more easy to see. There we go. So now when the user opens up their 360 film, by default it would be looking in this direction rather than at the castle gates. So we use offset to, well, offset our positions essentially. Now if we used to try and use offset without our footage being already interpreted as monoscopic equitangular, you could actually start to, it wouldn't necessarily work the way you'd expect it to. So make sure that at all times your footage is interpreted in the correct format first. So I'm just going to do the similar thing over here. So I want this to start off looking, let's say, at the usher here. One thing I'm going to also do is here we can see our 360 view is sort of a square. That doesn't really emulate the look that you'd have on YouTube or mobile phone. So what we can do is we can click on this little settings sort of spanner icon here, and we can go to VR video settings. And I'm going to adjust my monitor view horizontal to be 160 by 90. So the reason we're doing 160 by 90 is 16 by 9. There we go. That gives us a 16 by 9 ratio, which is typical for most screens you'll find. And now this kind of gives us a better view of what it would look like on a typical mobile phone. We can also keyframe any of our effects, so similar to After Effects, anywhere where you see a stopwatch, we could click to start, move along our timeline, and adjust the value. Ooh, making sure I'm actually doing that on the white clip. So I can see, there we go, so let's say, there we go. So if I wanted to force the user to look in a certain direction, I could actually kind of take control of the user's camera by using the offset shift and then forcefully moving the camera to sort of pan to a new perspective. Now, I would advise you use this very sparingly. If you don't use it carefully, people can get motion sickness. So this is something that you can kind of do if you need to. The other kind of rule of thumb with 360 is if people are typically going to watch your content sitting down, try and keep most of the action within a kind of 270 degree kind of field. So people are happy to look forwards and to their sides. They typically aren't quite as happy to turn their neck or body full 180 degrees behind them to view things. So you want the majority of your action to really be within your kind of typical peripheral vision. So we will keep editing this. Again, I'm not going to do a proper edit on this. We always need to make sure that we kind of come out of our VR toggle display when we're adding any elements to our scene. So I'm not going to go through the whole editing process. Again, editing in Premiere, there's plenty of tutorials out there. The general rule of thumb and general gist of film producing is still true. Make sure you kind of are telling a story. If you're using audio tracks, try and hit certain beats. And we're trying to only keep our kind of video to only be maximum a minute long, really. We're not aiming for a feature-length film of this, largely. So in the next series of videos, we're going to look at how to remove elements from the bottom of our screen, how we're going to add text to our scene, and how we're going to then start looking at adding some VFX shots like compositions in compositions, and kind of transitional effects, just to make our piece look a little bit more alive and a little bit more engaging, a little bit more immersive. We could also adjust our kind of colour settings for our scene, so we could go over to our Lumetri colour and adjust our colour settings. So if a scene isn't quite colour corrected the way you want it to, we can manually force and change and tint things within this window. So again, play about with that. If we had this quite dark and saturated, it can become quite moody. If we have this quite neon and cyberpunky, we can boost the colours and tint it. So again, depending on what your kind of piece's feel is, play about with adjusting colours and graphics and settings as you see fit. So this is part one of our working in 360 pipeline kind of production stage. So this is after we've already captured our footage and after we've already stitched our film. Remember to like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next part. Goodbye.